He had everything handed to him: a private car, designer clothes, and a last name powerful enough to open every door before he even knocked. But inside, he was falling apart, failing every test, drowning in silence. Everyone had given up on him: teachers, classmates, even his own mother. Until one day, in the quietest corner of that school, a man, a janitor no one ever truly noticed, said something that made Landon feel as if someone had just looked straight into his soul. He thought the man was just mopping the floor. But he didn't know. That man was about to sweep away everything he thought he knew. His name was Landon Tate, the only son of Veronica Tate, tech billionaire and founder of Tate Motors, a name that graced the cover of Forbes as regularly as the seasons changed. Landon grew up surrounded by luxury: private cars, personal chefs, and birthday parties filled with celebrity guests. But amid all that excess, there was one thing he could never fill: purpose. At 17, Landon attended one of the most prestigious private schools in Detroit, not because he was smart, but because the Tate name was a golden ticket. No entrance exam, no interview, just a bank transfer and a last name heavy enough to open any door. In marble-lined halls adorned with portraits of accomplished alumni, Landon was famous for three things: arrogance, expensive suits, and disastrous grades. Teachers passed him out of fear, not merit. And Landon? He couldn't care less. So what? One day I'll inherit an empire. What can grades do that the Tate name can't? He mocked his teachers, ignored his classmates, and sat smirking in class, as if the world existed only to serve as his backdrop. Once, when the school counselor called him in to talk about his failing grades, Landon leaned back in his chair and said smugly, "I could buy this entire school if I wanted to." What difference does a grade make? The remark spread like wildfire, but no one dared to respond. From teachers to students, everyone walked on eggshells around Landon. No one wanted to risk losing the Tate family's massive donations. At home, things weren't any better. Veronica Tate was the definition of cold steel: logical, relentless, and utterly uncompromising, even with her son. One evening, after yet another call from the school, she said coldly, "You're a disappointment, Landon. If you worked for me, you'd have been fired long ago." Landon folded his arms and lifted his chin. "But I'm not your employee." "I'm your son," Veronica replied flatly, without emotion. "The world doesn't care about that. Either you become someone, or you'll just be a spoiled kid living off my name. And I won't carry you forever." The silence that followed hit like a punch. Veronica wasn't bluffing. She meant every word. The next morning, Landon went to school as if nothing had happened. He drove his shiny new Audi, his most recent birthday gift, into the teacher's parking lot and strutted down the hallway like it was a runway. Some eyes looked at him with admiration, others with disdain, but one pair never left him. His. An older white man, probably in his 50s, was bent over mopping the floor near the side hallway. His posture was upright, his eyes calm but deep. His uniform was wrinkled. His dignity wasn't. Landon didn't look at him. To him, the janitor was invisible, just part of the background. But the pressure kept building. More exams, more failures. Then came the final blow. His mother cut off his credit cards, took back the car, and made him ride the bus like everyone else. One gray morning, as Landon walked through the familiar halls, he saw the janitor again, bent over the floor, murmuring something under his breath. "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." Landon stopped. "What did you just say?" The man looked up, eyes steady and sharp. "Not something you're ready to understand yet, son." Landon scoffed, but something inside him stirred. Just one sentence, and it pierced straight through his chest. The man turned back to his work. But Landon couldn't stop thinking about those words. If you've ever met someone who changed the course of your life with just one sentence, hit subscribe, because the next stories might make you look within yourself. And tell me, do you think someone like Landon could really change because of one man with a mop? Landon Tate climbed the front steps of the school building with both hands buried deep in his coat pockets. That morning, air felt different, colder, denser. The arrogance that once made him walk like he owned the world was gone. He moved quickly, quietly, trying not to feel the weight of each step pulling him down. That morning, he received his literature exam back. A white envelope, folded in half, cold as a verdict. He opened it with his usual indifference, maybe a low C, maybe a touch of pity. 18 out of 100. A bright red line below, "Did you even read the passage?" Landon stared at the paper, blinked, forced a smile, looked around. No one was laughing with him. The other exams came like a storm. Math, 24%. History, 31%. Biology, a perfect 0. It wasn't funny anymore. The counselor called him in again. Her voice this time was wooden, rigid. "Landon, you're in academic crisis. I'm not talking about behavior. I'm talking about failure. Statistically, you're at the bottom of the entire senior class." Landon shrugged, forcing nonchalance. "Temporary. I'll hire a tutor. You've had 3 already, and all 3 quit." That sentence hit right where his pride lived. Landon stayed silent. That afternoon, he slipped out through the back door, avoiding any eyes. And there he was again, the janitor, scrubbing a sticky soda stain near the cafeteria. The man looked up and smiled politely. Landon paused. "You said something the other day. About Socrates?" The man straightened up, wiping his hands on his apron, slowly. "And you remember?" "Yeah, it just stuck with me. Funny, a janitor quoting an ancient philosopher." The man folded his arms, eyes calm, not judging. "Funnier still that a boy with the world at his feet can't pass a reading test." Landon bit his lip. That one hurt. "You used to be a teacher, didn't you?" "Not just philosophy. I taught a lot more, before life threw me out." "Then teach me," Landon said, his voice trembling. "Help me. Please." The man studied him for a long moment. "One condition. You leave your name and your pride at the door. Start from 0. From the ground. Deal," Landon whispered. "I can't keep falling." The next morning, Landon arrived before sunrise. The building still slept, wrapped in morning fog. He clutched the notebook the man had given him, as if it were sacred. He found him, Jack O'Connell, in the East Wing, polishing the floor in slow, precise circles. A single earbud played a soft old gospel tune. Landon stood for a moment before speaking. "Hey, you said you'd teach me, remember?" Jack paused, removed the earbud, and looked at him calmly. "I remember. And I also said, it won't be easy. I don't care. I need this. Then let's begin. But first, you should know my name." "Jack O'Connell." Landon gave a small smile. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years. Before that, a few other schools. And before that—" He stopped, met Landon's eyes. "I was a college professor, English literature and philosophy." Landon's eyes widened. "Why would you give that up? For this?" Jack folded the rag, his voice low and unashamed. "Sometimes life takes everything you think is yours, leaves you only what you truly know. And I still know how to teach." Landon nodded, overwhelmed. For the first time, he saw strength that didn't need power. "So, Where do we start? I read some of the stuff last night and didn't get any of it. That's your first lesson, Jack said. Arrogance makes you believe you already know. But when you admit you don't, that's when learning begins. I can read, Landon snapped, defensive. I didn't say you couldn't read. I said, I'm not here to teach you to read words. I'm here to teach you to understand them. He pulled out an old notebook. Every morning, before classes, you meet me here, 1 hour. And every night, after I finish cleaning, you stay and write. Write what you learned, what you felt, what you understood. No grades, only truth. Landon opened the notebook. Blank white pages, an invitation, a challenge. What if I fail again? Then for the first time, you'll know you had the courage to face it, day after day. A new rhythm began, quiet, steady, almost sacred. Landon arrived early. Jack greeted him not with lectures, but questions. What does this sentence make you feel? Why is the character silent? What does courage sound like to you? He didn't preach. He provoked thought. Gradually, Landon began to change. Books stopped feeling like punishment. Words started to speak back. The notebook thickened, not with answers, but with fear, thoughts, and truth. He wrote about his mother, about pressure, about the anger of feeling empty. Jack read every line, no judgment, just quiet understanding. One night, as Landon was writing in the cafeteria, 2 boys walked by snickering. One of them, Josh, the football star, nudged his friend. Look, the Tate heirs writing love letters to the janitor. Landon clenched his fists, ready to stand up, but Jack placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and whispered, You can't measure depth with a shallow ruler. Landon looked up. That line cut deeper than any insult ever could. That night, his phone lit up with a message from his mother. They updated your grades. Final warning. Change or move out. No trust fund. No apartment. Nothing. Landon stared at the screen. Didn't reply. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. He was ready. Friday arrived, along with the end-of-term buzz. Students chatting, teachers rushing, the future humming in every hallway. Landon walked through the crowd, clutching a folder tight. Make-up essays, praised assignments, and a draft titled The Illusion of Power, Jack's first challenge. For the first time in his life, Landon felt proud. Maybe his mother would too. But when he reached the office, Veronica Tate was already there, in her stiff gray suit, eyes cold as steel. She didn't even look up from her phone. You're late. Let's make this quick. The counselor nervously handed over the new report. Landon reached for it, but Veronica snatched it first. She skimmed it. The grades were better, not perfect, but clearly improving. Teacher notes, shows initiative, active participation, and a remarkable change in attitude. Veronica closed the file, her voice dry. This is what you call progress? I'm trying. Really, trying with whom? Your last tutor quit. Who's helping you? Landon hesitated. He didn't want to expose Jack, but something inside him said it was time to tell the truth. Jack. The janitor's silence. The air thickened. Veronica blinked, then laughed. A sharp, cold laugh. You're joking. He used to be a professor. He's a janitor, Landon. And that's all you need to know. Landon's voice cracked, but stayed firm. He's taught me more than anyone you've ever hired. He's teaching me how to think. Veronica stepped closer, her tone low and blade cold. You're disgracing this family. Wasting time on people who have nothing to offer. He sees me, Mom. You never did. Veronica froze, looked at her son as if he were a stranger. If you keep down this path, you'll lose everything. The car, the money, the name. Don't test me." Landon took a deep breath. Every cell in his body trembled, but he said it anyway, each word steady and clear. "Maybe I need to lose everything to find out who I really am." Veronica said nothing. She just turned away. The door closed, cold, final. The following week, Landon was quieter, angrier, but unbroken. The kids at school noticed. So did the teachers. Rumors began to spread. Some said Landon was obsessed with the janitor. Others mocked him openly. Josh and his friends even posted a short video of Landon studying with Jack after hours, captioned, "Lessons from a Loser." Landon didn't flinch. Instead of arguing back, he printed his essay and pinned it to the school's reading board with the headline, "Learning doesn't make me weak. Ignorance does." Landon Tate. The paper disappeared the next day, but the message had already taken root. Monday morning brought a strange stillness. The rain had stopped. The sky was gray, but unmoving. Landon walked into school early, coffee in hand and a notebook under his arm. He found Jack in the back hallway, mopping near the old science wing. Jack looked up as Landon approached, one eyebrow raised. "So now you bring peace offerings?" "Coffee, huh?" "And something else," Landon said, handing him a cup. Jack took it, studying him closely. "You've got that look. The one people get right before saying something that might change everything." Landon sat down right on the floor, still clutching the notebook. "I looked you up online." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "You did what?" "Not in a creepy way," Landon said quickly. "I just wanted to know. You quote Socrates. You teach like someone with 20 years of experience. And I found an old article." He paused, meeting Jack's eyes. Jack O'Connell, former faculty member at Wayne State University, guest lecturer, published author, award winner. Jack closed his eyes for a long moment. That man existed once. He just doesn't get invited back anymore. "What happened?" Landon asked gently. Jack leaned on the handle of his mop. 2008. The financial crisis. The university cut its budget. I had a family, a little boy, a wife who worked as a nurse. We needed 2 incomes. They cut the non-tenured staff first, and I was one of them. He paused, voice lowering. I tried to find another job. Applied everywhere, but the job market collapsed. No one was hiring. The savings dried up. We lost the house. My wife started working double shifts. Then she had an accident driving home one night. Landon swallowed hard. I'm so sorry." "She lived," Jack said softly. "But with the medical bills, we had nothing left. And I had to carry the family. Did whatever I could. Cleaning, lifting, security work. Anything that paid." He looked down the empty hallway. "My son grew up watching his father do all that. I think he used to be ashamed. He couldn't understand why a man who once lectured at a university now scrubbed toilets. But I did it for him, and I don't regret it." Landon nodded, overwhelmed. "Where is he now?" Jack smiled faintly, the first time his eyes seemed to light up. "Second year of college, full scholarship, electrical engineering. Kid's a lot smarter than I ever was." "You did it," Landon whispered. "I survived," Jack corrected. "There's a difference." Landon took a deep breath. "Then, I want to make you a deal." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" "I want you to teach me. Really teach me. Like you taught your college students. Don't go easy. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I want to learn everything you know. I want to become someone, not because of my name, but because of what I do." Jack looked at him for a long time. There was something new in Landon's eyes. No defiance, no arrogance, just hunger. "And your part of the deal?" Jack asked. "I won't quit," Landon said, "no matter how hard it gets. I'll fail, rewrite, relearn, whatever it takes." Jack was silent for a moment, then held out his hand. "Then we have a deal." They shook on it. No contract, no fine print, just commitment. That week, everything accelerated. Jack built a plan, not around grades, but understanding. Landon read James Baldwin, Langston Hughes, Toni Morrison, Steinbeck, Hemingway, writers who spoke of struggle, humanity, truth. He began writing reflections instead of essays. He questioned systems, injustice, and himself. Every night, Landon handed Jack a notebook full of thoughts. Every night, Jack gave it back with deeper questions. The school still didn't know. To everyone else, Landon just seemed to be finally trying. But inside, something much larger was shifting. A few days later, Landon showed up to their evening session with someone new. "This is Renee," he said. "She's in my biology class." "Needs help with writing," Jack smiled. "Looks like we've got ourselves a class." Then more students came, quietly, cautiously. Rumors spread that there was someone in school who actually taught. No grading, no judgment, just teaching. The abandoned library became their secret classroom. They read, they wrote, they debated. Sometimes they cried. It was beautiful, and it was also dangerous. One afternoon, Jack was called into the office. The vice principal's voice was as cold as a memo. "Mr. O'Connell, we've received complaints. Parents are questioning why their children are spending time after school with a custodial worker. It's not appropriate." "I'm teaching," Jack said simply. "You are not a certified teacher here. That's not part of your job description." Jack met his gaze. "Saving these kids is part of my humanity." The vice principal said nothing more. Jack knew what was coming. The next day, Landon heard the news. "They told you to stop?" "They did." "That's insane." "You're helping them." "I know," Jack interrupted quietly. "But that's how systems work. They don't attack what's broken. They attack what's working, if it's not approved to work that way." Landon clenched his fists. "I'll tell my mother. I'll talk to the board. I'll go public." "Not yet," Jack said firmly. "Your voice needs to stand on its own first, not on your mother's name." Yours, Landon nodded. He understood. The revolution had begun. Winter crept into Detroit, draping fog over every street, making the mornings solemn and cold. The school hallways felt darker, quieter. But inside Landon, something was beginning to glow. A new light he couldn't yet name. One morning, Jack asked Landon to meet him in the old library, a dusty room no one used anymore. He sat across from Landon, arms folded over a book, eyes steady as if peering through the shell the boy had built around himself. "It's time," Jack said softly. "I tell you the one thing no one ever taught." Landon leaned forward slightly. "I'm listening." Jack gave a faint smile. "The secret of learning isn't in grades, textbooks, or diplomas. The real secret is transformation." He stood and walked slowly between the old wooden shelves. Most people learn just to pass, to survive, to repeat someone else's words and hope that's enough. But you can't change that way. You only truly change when something inside you breaks, then rebuilds itself, stronger than before. Landon was silent. Jack watched him a while longer, his voice dropping to something almost like confession. "You've already started that process, but you need to know what real learning feels like. It's messy, it's painful, It's personal, but it's real. He handed Landon an old gray-covered book, the corners bent. "This book saved me," he said. "Man's Search for Meaning" by Viktor Frankl. "I read it after I lost my job, my house, when I thought I had nothing left. It taught me that even when they take away everything you have, they can't take away who you choose to become." Landon opened the cover. Blue ink notes filled the margins, underlined sentences, exclamation marks. "You're giving this to me? I'm trusting you with it." Frankl wrote this after surviving the concentration camps. If a man can find meaning in that kind of hell, then you and we can find meaning in what we're living through. "Why me?" Jack sat down again, his tone lower, steadier. "Because when I saw you that day, you weren't arrogant. You looked like someone drowning, and something in you was still fighting." Frankl said, "When a person has a reason to live, they can endure almost any how. You're searching for your reason, Landon, and this book will help you find it." Landon gripped the book tightly, feeling its weight, not just physical, but emotional. "I'll read every word, and then I'll write something real. Not for me, for you." Jack stood, picked up his mop and bucket. Before leaving, he turned and said, "The next time someone asks how you're doing at this school, don't say, 'I'm improving.' Say, 'I'm becoming someone.'" The door closed softly. Landon sat still for a long time. The book rested in his hands, its warmth lingering. His chest felt heavy, not with fear, but with meaning. He no longer wanted just to pass. He wanted to have worth. And in the cold winter of Detroit, for the first time, Landon Tate began to feel warm. From within, something had truly changed. You could see it in the way Landon walked. He no longer strode through the hallways like a prince, but like someone who had just woken from a long dream. Still the same expensive clothes, but the eyes were different. No longer empty, but clear. No longer wandering, but with direction. Most teachers didn't know what to think. The arrogant heir of the Tate family now raised his hand in class, asked questions, turned in full essays, even volunteered for group work. One day in history class, he suddenly spoke up. "Can we talk about how the textbook glosses over slavery as if it's just a footnote?" The room fell silent. Even the teacher hesitated. "Where did you hear that?" he asked carefully. "From James Baldwin, from Steinbeck, and from a man no one sees." No one knew how to respond. But no one forgot that moment. Landon wasn't just changing himself. He was starting to see others. Renee Cooper, the quiet girl who always ate alone in the cafeteria, daughter of an auto factory worker pulling double shifts to pay tuition. Marcus, the boy working 2 jobs after school, washing cars on Saturday nights to send money home for his sister. Ms. Davis, the American literature teacher who taught with passion but was always ignored by the administration in staff meetings. And Landon realized something. When you truly learn to see people, you begin to see how many have been invisible all along. Every day with Jack continued like a quiet ritual. Mornings filled with questions, evenings filled with writing. He was building something, not just better grades, but a better self. Landon's essays grew more personal, more political, more powerful. Jack read, edited, and replied with tough love. Red ink, short notes, sharp as a blade. Don't just say it, understand it. This sentence is beautiful but hollow. Rewrite it with your soul, and Landon rewrote, again and again. He no longer cared what people thought, not out of arrogance, but because, for the first time, he knew who he was becoming. One afternoon, Landon brought another student to the evening class. "This is Marcus," he said. He needs help with his college essay. Jack smiled, eyes warm. Looks like we've got a real class now. Soon, more students came, quietly, carefully. A girl named Maya from chemistry. A Latino boy named Carlos, the one who always fell asleep in class because he worked until 3 a.m. Rumors spread through the school. Someone was actually helping the students. No grading, no judgment, just teaching. The abandoned library became their secret classroom. They read Baldwin, Steinbeck, Morrison, Frankl writers of struggle, dignity, and humanity. They wrote, not essays for grades, but truths they'd never dared to speak. They debated about systems, injustice, and what education should be. They cried, telling stories no one had ever asked to hear. It was beautiful, and it was also dangerous. One rainy afternoon, Jack was called into the office. Vice Principal Patterson sat behind his desk, voice cold as steel. "Mr. O'Connell, you need to stop your teaching sessions. You're not a certified teacher here." This comes directly from the board. Jack nodded slowly, stood up. Before leaving, he paused at the door and said quietly, "You used to be like me, Patterson. You used to care. I remember. I just hope someday you will again." The next day, Landon heard the news. He found Jack cleaning the glass doors in the main hallway. The afternoon sun gleamed off the freshly polished surface, bright enough to sting the eyes. "They told you to stop?" Jack didn't turn around. "They did." "That's insane. You're helping kids this system forgot, I know. So why don't you fight back?" Jack finally turned, setting down the rag. "Because that's what the system does, Landon. It doesn't attack what's broken. It attacks what's working, if it's working in a way they don't approve of." Landon clenched his fists. "I'll tell my mother. I'll go to the board. I'll make it public." Jack placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Not yet. Your voice has to be strong enough to stand on its own, not on your mother's power, not on her money, but on you." Landon swallowed hard, silent. He understood, but his heart ached in a way words couldn't touch. "So, what do we do now?" Jack smiled faintly, sad, gentle. "You keep learning. Without me. I just opened the door. Now you have to walk through it. It won't be the same without you." "Especially without me," Jack said, voice tight but steady. Landon felt tears rise but held them back. He only nodded, slowly. "Because once you've opened your eyes to see the invisible, you can never go back." And that quiet revolution, though ordered to stop, was still burning. Inside them. Silent. And unstoppable. The following week was the strangest time in Landon's life. Jack was still at school, still mopping floors, still doing his job as usual. Except now he was no longer allowed to meet with students after hours. A new policy had just been issued. Non-instructional staff are prohibited from interacting with students outside of assigned duties. But the strange thing was, the kids didn't stop. The secret class went on, only now without Jack. They met in the old library, in the cafeteria after school, or at the park near campus. Renee led a discussion on Baldwin. Marcus read a poem he'd written for his father. A man who'd worked 30 years at Tate Motors before being laid off when the automation lines came in. Maya read her essay about being the daughter of immigrants, trying to explain to her parents why she didn't want to become a doctor. And Carlos, the boy who once fell asleep in class, told them about working through the night to send money back to his grandmother in Mexico. And Landon, he just sat there, quietly listening, really listening, for the first time in his life. But at home, pressure was mounting. One evening, Veronica called Landon into her home office, a sleek, glass-walled room overlooking the Detroit skyline, lined with trophies and framed awards. "I just got off the phone with your principal," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "You're still seeing that janitor." "It's not just me," Landon replied. "There are other students, too." "You don't understand?" Veronica snapped her laptop shut, the sound sharp and final. "That man is a legal liability. He's not certified. If anything happens—" "Nothing's happening. We're just learning. You're turning this family into a joke. Do you have any idea how many people are watching you? Do you understand that every time you fail, it reflects on someone?" "On you," Landon said quietly. "Always you. Never me." Veronica rose. Her voice was so cold, the air in the room seemed to freeze. "You have two choices. One, end this ridiculous study group, focus on your grades, and prepare for MIT like I arranged. Two, leave this house. No fund, no apartment, no Tate name on anything." Landon stood still. His heart pounded. "You can't do that." "I can. And I will. I don't raise mediocrity." He looked straight into her eyes, and for the first time, there was no fear, only clarity. "Then maybe I need to be mediocre for a while, to find out who I really am." Then he turned and walked out. Veronica stood alone in the glass room, her hands trembling, not sure whether from anger or from something she didn't dare to name. The next day, Landon went to school by public bus. No more private car. Credit cards frozen. His new phone confiscated. He used his old one again, the one with the cracked screen. Josh and his crew burst out laughing when they saw him step off the bus. "Look who it is! The Tate Motors prince dethroned." Landon didn't turn his head. He just walked past them, chin high, eyes bright, as if he'd found something they'd never understand. Down the hallway, Jack was replacing a trash bag. Light from the window reflected off the newly cleaned glass, glinting across his face. Their eyes met. Jack nodded. Neither said a word. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. A few days later, a new notice appeared on the main bulletin board. End-of-year speech competition. Theme: what does it mean to win in life? Open to all seniors. Family and community members invited. Prize: $50,000 scholarship plus university recommendation letter. Landon stood there for a long time. He thought about Jack, about Renee, about Marcus, about Carlos, about everything he'd learned, not from textbooks, but from people. He remembered Frankel's words: "When a person has a why to live, they can bear almost any how." And Landon realized he had found his why. Now it was time to speak it. That night, Landon didn't go home. He went to the public library, a place he'd never set foot in before, and opened a new notebook. He began to write, not for grades, not to impress, not to prove anything to his mother, but to tell the truth. For Jack, for his classmates, and for himself. He wrote all night, until the security guard reminded him the library was closing. He moved to a park bench under the yellow streetlights and kept writing. Then, to a 24-hour cafe, a cup of black coffee growing cold beside him for 4 straight hours. And when dawn broke, Landon looked down at the pages before him. His speech was finished. A speech that could change everything. The announcement for the end-of-year speech competition spread through the school like a spark in the wind. It was the biggest event of the year, not just because of the $50,000 scholarship, but because it was public. Families, sponsors, local journalists, even representatives from top universities would attend. For most students, it was a chance to shine, to add another line to their resumes. But for Landon, It wasn't an opportunity. It was a battlefield. He told no one he was entering. Not Jack, not Renee or Marcus, and certainly not his mother. Each night, after the school closed, Landon returned to the public library. No cameras, no hallway footsteps, no judging eyes. Just him, and blank pages. He wrote, then erased, then wrote again. Not what people wanted to hear, but what needed to be said. He thought of Frankel's words. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. He thought of Jack, the man who had lost everything, yet chose to keep teaching. Of Renee, who worked 2 shifts a day but still read Baldwin until 2 in the morning. Of Marcus, who sent nearly all his earnings home to his sister. They had no wealth, no privilege. But they had something Landon had lost for 17 years. Purpose. One night, while he was writing, his old cracked phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Can we meet?" "Need to talk." J. Landon knew immediately who it was. He texted back the address of a small cafe near school. 20 minutes later, Jack walked in. Same old flannel jacket, faded jeans, no pale blue uniform anymore. He looked different, freer, but also more tired. They sat in a quiet corner. Jack set a cup of black coffee on the table but didn't drink it. "I heard you signed up for the speech competition," Jack said. "News travels fast," Landon replied. "Renee told me." "She's worried about you." "Worried about what?" "That you'll say something you can't take back. Something that could cost you everything." "Maybe I need to lose it." Jack was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I know that feeling. The urge to rebel, to burn everything down. But ask yourself, are you doing this because it's right, or because you're angry?" Landon looked down at his notebook, then up again. "Both. And I think that's okay. Frankel said suffering only has meaning when it leads to something. I'm hurt, I'm angry. But for the first time, I see something worth hurting for. The truth." Jack smiled faintly, sadly. "You've grown faster than I expected." "You taught me." "No, Landon, I just showed you the door. You're the one who walked through it." They sat quietly amid soft jazz and the hum of the coffee grinder. Outside, Detroit, the city that once fell, was slowly standing back up. "I'll be there," Jack said at last, voice low. "In the auditorium. Back row. You won't see me, but I'll see you." "Thank you, Jack." "Don't thank me. Just tell your truth. That's all I've ever wanted." The next day, Landon found Renee in the library. She was reading Toni Morrison, pages rimmed with yellow sticky notes. "You're really going to do it?" she asked, eyes anxious. "I have to." "You know what'll happen, right?" "Your mother will be there. The board. If you say what I think you'll say, I'll lose everything." I know Renee's eyes welled up. "Why? Why are you willing to risk it all?" Landon smiled faintly. "Because for the first time, I have something worth saying. And people like you, like Marcus, like Carlos, you've lived that truth every day. It's time someone with privilege said it out loud. You don't have privilege anymore, Landon. They've taken it all." "No," he shook his head. "I still do. I still carry the Tate name. I still have skin no one questions. And I know that if I fail, I still have somewhere to fall back on. You don't. Marcus doesn't. That's why I have to speak." Renee wiped her tears. "Jack would be proud. He already is. Now I just need to make myself proud." That night, Landon returned home for the first time in 3 days. He'd been sleeping on Marcus's couch, a peeling paint apartment with a sagging sofa, but warmer than any mansion. Walking into the Tate estate, The luxury hit him like something foreign. High ceilings, designer furniture, walls heavy with silence. Veronica stood in the living room, a coffee cup in hand, gaze cold and sharp. "You're home. I'm just here to get a few things. You know about that speech competition, right?" "Yes. I arranged for you to go first. The director from MIT will be there. Mr. Preston, head of admissions. This is your chance to fix everything, to prove you're worthy of this name." Landon turned, looking directly at her. "Did it ever occur to you that maybe this name isn't worthy of me?" "What did you say?" Her voice cut like glass. "You built your empire on the backs of people like Marcus's father. You fired thousands of workers to raise profits. You've never seen me. You only see your reflection in me. You dare?" "I do. Because for the first time, I'm not afraid of you. Not afraid of losing the money, the name, anything. Because I've found something far more valuable." "What?" Veronica asked, her voice trembling. "Me?" Landon turned and walked upstairs, leaving his mother frozen in the silence of that immaculate room. For the first time, Veronica Tate, the woman who always had an answer, had none. The night before the competition, Landon didn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the Detroit skyline, old buildings being restored, once forgotten streets glowing again with light. A city once dead, now reborn. Just like him. He opened his notebook one last time. On the first page, Jack's red ink note still gleamed. Learning isn't memorizing. Learning is transformation. And transformation hurts before it frees. Landon closed the notebook gently. Tomorrow, he would walk onto that stage. Not as Veronica Tate's son, not as a spoiled boy born into silk and privilege, just as Landon. And for the first time in his life, that was enough. When dawn came, golden light slipped through the window pane. Landon rose and dressed in a simple suit, not designer, but one he'd bought from a thrift store, paid for with money from his night shifts at a cafe. In his backpack, the notebook, his copy of Man's Search for Meaning, and his 12-page speech, edited in his own red ink. He looked around the room one last time. The big bed, the bare walls, all the expensive emptiness. Then he stepped out, leaving the door open. Veronica was already awake, standing in the kitchen, coffee in hand, poised as ever. "You're leaving?" "Yes. I'll be there." "Front row." "I know." They looked at each other, a fleeting moment between two strangers who once shared a name. "Landon," Veronica said softly, "don't do something you'll regret." He smiled, sad but certain. "The only thing I regret is how long it took me to find my voice." And with that, Landon walked out into the cold Detroit morning. A storm was coming, but he was ready. The grand hall of Crestwood Academy had never been this full. Every seat, from front to back, was occupied. The chandelier lights scattered cold streaks across the ceiling. The podium stood in the center of the stage, framed by a large banner that read, "Annual Speech Competition. What does winning in life truly mean?" In the front rows sat rows of expensive suits. Veronica Tate sat upright, arms folded, face unreadable. Beside her were board members, the MIT representative, and a journalist from the Detroit Free Press. The middle rows held parents and teachers. Vice Principal Patterson sat beside the principal, eyes fixed on the event program. At the back were the students. Renee sat next to Marcus and Maya. Carlos wore his cleanest white shirt, hands clasped tightly together. And in the very last row, near the exit, sat an older man with graying hair and a freshly pressed blue shirt. Jack O'Connell. No one recognized him, which was exactly how he wanted it. Behind the curtain, Landon stood alone. The other 5 contestants whispered through their notes, adjusting cue cards, their pressed suits immaculate, their hair sleek, their speeches printed in bold. Landon held 12 handwritten pages, corners wrinkled from being turned over too many times. Victoria Chen, student body president and a sure admit to Yale, looked over. Not nervous, Tate? No. Really? After everything, cut off from your money, your mom watching like a hawk, and you're walking on stage with scribbled papers? Landon looked her in the eye. Maybe that's why I'm not nervous. I've got nothing left to lose. Victoria smirked softly. How tragic. But Landon didn't feel tragic. He felt free. The principal stepped up to the podium. The microphone crackled faintly. Welcome, everyone, to our annual speech competition. Today, 6 of our outstanding students will share their thoughts on an important question. What does it mean to win in life? Polite applause filled the room. Our first speaker, a familiar name, Landon Tate. This time the applause was thinner, punctuated by whispers. Veronica lifted her chin slightly. Jack leaned forward from the back row. Landon walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. 300 eyes fixed on him. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. He placed the pages on the podium, inhaled deeply, and looked up. My name is Landon Tate. His voice was steady, clear, unwavering. Some of you know me as Veronica Tate's spoiled son, lazy, untalented, failing every exam. The whispers grew louder. Veronica's brow tightened. They said I had everything, money, opportunity, a guaranteed future. But the truth is, he paused, locking eyes with the front row, I had nothing. In the back row, Jack smiled faintly. Until one man, a man most people only saw holding a mop, gave me something no one ever had. Time, attention, and a simple question. Do you want to change? Landon glanced at his first page but didn't read. He'd memorized every word. He wasn't my teacher. Not officially. He was this school's janitor. His name is Jack O'Connell. Before life knocked him down, he was a university lecturer. Some heads turned, searching. Jack remained still, head bowed. He didn't teach me how to score better grades. He taught me how to read, not just words, but what lies between them. He taught me how to write, not to impress, but to understand myself. And most importantly, Landon's voice thickened. He taught me how to see those this society has chosen to make invisible. He turned toward the students section. Renee Cooper! She's right there! He pointed. Renee blushed, then lifted her chin. Daughter of a factory worker. Works 2 shifts to pay tuition. Reads Toni Morrison until 2 a.m. because she actually cares about learning, not about the diploma. Marcus Williams washes cars every Saturday night to send money home to his sister. His father worked at Tate Motors for 30 years, until my mother's company decided robots were cheaper than people. Veronica's hands clenched. Her face turned to stone. Carlos Mendez falls asleep in class, not because he's lazy, but because he works from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., sending money back to his grandmother in Mexico. The crowd turned toward them, not in pity, but in respect. They don't need a $50,000 scholarship to prove their worth. They win every day, by surviving, by enduring, by refusing to give up in a system designed to crush them. Scattered applause began from the back. Marcus wiped his eyes. And me? I was handed everything, and I failed. Not because I was stupid, but because no one ever taught me the one thing that mattered most. Landon lifted his gaze and locked eyes with his mother. That winning isn't climbing higher by stepping on others. Winning is pulling people up with you. People ask, what does it mean to win in life? I used to think it meant money, power, fame. Now I know the truth. His tone softened, sincere and unguarded. Winning is waking up, seeing who you truly are, not who others tell you to be. Winning is finding purpose in suffering. As Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, when a man has a why to live, he can bear almost any how. I found my why, not in a boardroom or on a Forbes cover, but in an abandoned library, beside kids the system forgot, with a man who held a mop, but carried wisdom no university could teach. Landon looked toward the back row, searching for Jack's eyes. Mr. O'Connell didn't save me with answers. He saved me with questions. The biggest one being, who do you want to become? Tears streamed down Landon's face. He didn't wipe them, didn't hide. I don't know if I'll win this scholarship. Honestly, I don't care. Because I've already won. I've found myself. And if anyone here, student, parent, or person of power, feels empty in the middle of everything they own, please hear me. His voice rose, echoing across the hall. Greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. And sometimes, the person who teaches you the most doesn't wear a suit or stand behind a podium. They hold a mop. They scrub floors. They're overlooked. Until someone privileged and lucky enough like me chooses to look down instead of just looking up. Landon lifted his pages. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Yet the microphone caught every word. My name is Landon Tate. I used to think that name meant something. But the man who taught me how to be human, he turned toward the back, where Jack now stood, tears glistening, is Jack O'Connell. And I don't need anyone to validate that truth. I know it. If not for him, I wouldn't be standing here today. I'd still be drowning in the emptiness of myself. So if you're hearing this... The entire hall turned toward the back. They saw Jack standing, hand over his mouth, trembling. Thank you for teaching me the only lesson that truly matters. Learning doesn't make us weak. Ignorance does. And the greatest ignorance is believing that worth comes from status, instead of from the soul. Landon bowed and stepped away from the podium. Silence. 3 seconds, that felt like 3 hours. Then a single clap. From the back. Renee stood up, crying, clapping. Marcus rose next. Then Maya. Then Carlos. Then the row behind them. And the one after that. Within 10 seconds, the entire hall was on its feet, except for the front row. Veronica Tate remained seated, arms crossed, face still. But in her eyes, something had cracked. Vice Principal Patterson looked toward Jack. Their eyes met. Patterson slowly stood and began to clap. Applause thundered through the hall. Like a storm. Like liberation. Landon stood backstage, shaking, exhausted, but more alive than ever. Jack walked slowly down the aisle, approaching the stage. When he reached it, they looked at each other. No words. Jack nodded. Landon nodded back. Everything that mattered had already been said. The remaining 5 contestants went up one by one and finished their parts. Polished speeches about leadership, innovation, success. All good. All hollow. When the last one ended, the judges withdrew to deliberate. The hall was still buzzing, but no one was talking about the other 5. They were only talking about one. Out in the hallway, Landon leaned against the wall, exhausted. Renee found him first. She hugged him tight, said nothing. Then Marcus, then Maya and Carlos. a small circle of people who understood. "You did it," Marcus rasped. "You just said out loud what we have to live through every day." "Not me," Landon shook his head. "Jack did. I was just the one holding the mic." "Exactly," a familiar voice said. Jack stood there, hands in his pockets, a faint smile, eyes still red. "That's why it matters. The ones with the mic have to speak for the ones without." Landon stepped forward. "I hope I didn't make things worse for you." "Worse?" Jack laughed. "Landon, you just reminded this whole city that education isn't a privilege. It's people. Whatever happens to me, that's worth it." They hugged, not as teacher and student anymore, but like family. Inside the hall, the judges returned. The principal stepped up to the podium, envelope in hand. "This is the hardest decision we've ever had to make," he said. All 6 contestants were outstanding, but one speech touched something far beyond our scoring rubric. Veronica sat up straight, fingers tightening around her purse strap. "The winner of the $50,000 scholarship is—" A pause. A held breath. "Victoria Chen." Polite applause. Victoria, the near lock for Yale, walked up to accept the award, her smile immaculate. In the hallway, Renee looked at Landon, worried. "You okay?" Landon smiled, a real smile. Completely okay. And he meant it. For the first time, the outcome didn't define him. But the principal wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "the judges have decided to create a special award. We've never done this before, but sometimes a moment demands extraordinary recognition." He glanced down at the paper. "The Special Courage Award, given to a student who showed bravery not only in words, but in life, goes to Landon Tate." The hall went silent for a beat, then erupted. Renee screamed. Marcus smacked the wall. Carlos jumped up and down. Landon stood frozen, legs suddenly weak. "Go," Jack nudged his shoulder. "You deserve it." Landon walked into the hall. All eyes turned to him. This time, he didn't tremble, didn't fear. The principal handed him a wooden plaque engraved with his name and an envelope. "Not a scholarship," he said softly, "but a letter of admission to Wayne State University, College of Education, with full funding. If you want it." Landon took the envelope, hands shaking. "Thank you, sir." Stepping off the stage, he looked for 2 faces. Jack, at the door, clapping louder than anyone, smile bright as stage lights, and Veronica, still in the front row, arms folded. But when their eyes met, something was different. She nodded. Just once. Very small. But it was there. A few months later, spring settled over Detroit. Fresh leaves covered old buildings. A city once symbolic of collapse now stood as a symbol of rebirth. Landon stood before a small building on the city's east side. A new sign hung above the door. O'Connell Tate Learning Center. Not a fancy school. Just a space with books, tables, and a promise. No one gets left behind. Inside, Jack shelved books. No uniform, just a shirt and jeans. His eyes were brighter than ever. Renee was teaching a group of high schoolers about Toni Morrison. Marcus led a creative writing workshop. Carlos handled math for the immigrant kids. And Landon? He studied education at Wayne State. Every evening and weekend, he came back here. To teach, to learn, to listen. One afternoon, as gold light poured through the window, came a knock at the door. Landon opened it. Veronica Tate stood there. No driver, no assistant. Just her, in a simple sweater, holding a bag. "Mom? Will you let me in?" They sat in the small room Jack used as an office. The silence was taut, but not hostile. "I watched your speech video," Veronica began. "Many times." Landon waited. "I was angry. For weeks. I thought you'd betrayed me, the family, everything we stand for. I know. But then, her voice shook. A factory worker named Rosa wrote me. Your son said what we feel every day. Thank you for raising someone with a conscience. Veronica wiped away tears, Landon's first time seeing her cry. I didn't raise you that way. You learned it yourself. And I was wrong. You did what you thought was right. No. I did what was easy. I built an empire by forgetting the people who built it. You reminded me. She handed him the bag. Inside was a check and a letter. This isn't money for you. It's for the center. No conditions. No name on the wall. It's just how I start to make things right. Landon saw the number. $500,000. Mom? And there's more. Veronica drew a breath. I've invited Mr. O'Connell back to Wayne State. Special lecturer position. Tuition funded by Tate Motors. If he wants it? Landon was speechless. He hugged his mother. For the first time in years, she hugged him back. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she whispered. But I hope one day. We're already on that road, Mom. That evening, Landon and Jack stood on the center's roof, looking at the Detroit skyline. City lights glittered like fallen stars on Earth. Did you hear about Wayne State? Landon asked. Heard, Jack nodded. You'll take it, right? Jack paused, then smiled. I said yes. With one condition. What is it? You'll be my teaching assistant. Learn while you teach. Teach while you learn. Landon laughed, tears running down. You're still not done with me, are you? Never. This isn't about finishing. It's about continuing. Passing it on. Frankel said, meaning isn't something you find. It's something you create. And we're creating it. Exactly. They stood quietly, watching a once-dead city alive again. 2 years later, the O'Connell Tate Center had expanded. 3 locations across Detroit, hundreds of students, dozens of volunteers, including Renee, now a sophomore in literature, and Marcus, working on his first book about a working-class childhood. Landon, now 20, stood before a class of 15 teens. Not rich kids. Kids from neighborhoods public schools had forgotten. Today we're talking about what learning means, he began. Not memorizing. Not grades. Transformation. He held up the old book, Man's Search for Meaning, the exact copy Jack had given him. A teacher gave this to my teacher. He said, when people have a why, they can endure almost any how. So, what's your why? A boy at the back, Diego, 14, who often came in with dirty clothes and an empty stomach, raised his hand. Sir, what if… I don't know yet? Landon smiled. That's why you're here. We'll find it, together. After class, Jack dropped by. He now taught full-time at Wayne State, but always made time for the center. They sat with coffee in the small office. Have you heard? Jack asked. Patterson resigned as vice principal. Really? He wrote me. Said that after your speech, he couldn't keep doing a job that made him forget why he entered education. Now he teaches at an inner-city public school. Landon nodded. People can change. If they want to, exactly. Jack looked out the window at the kids playing basketball. You know, when I lost everything, job, house, dreams, I thought my life was over. But it wasn't over. It just changed shape. And now? Now I see clearer than ever. I lost position, but found purpose. Lost status, but found students who truly needed me. And most importantly, he turned. I found a second son. Landon swallowed, eyes brimming. And to me, you're the father I truly have. They didn't say anything more. They didn't need to. There are victories with no trophies, no prize money, no headlines. Victories of awakening, of courage, of daring to see others, and, through that, to see yourself. If this story touched you, remember, everyone has a why. When you find it, every how gets a little less frightening. If you feel this story deserves to be shared, like the video so the algorithm is less likely to make it invisible. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next journeys of transformation. Comment and tell me, what's your why? Or, whose story should I continue in the O'Connell-Tate universe? See you in the next episode, where one right question can change a life.